Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the official opening of the European Green Week 2020. Nature and biodiversity are the focus of this year's European Green Week, with the motto, "A new beginning for people and nature." After the adoption of a new European biodiversity strategy for 2030 in May, Green Week will highlight the contribution biodiversity can make to society and the economy, the role it can play in supporting and stimulating recovery in a post-pandemic world, bringing jobs and sustainable growth. We are in Portugal, in the city of Lisbon, the European Green Week capital 2020. The official opening conference of EU Green Week is being held at the Grand Auditorium of the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation, and we are broadcasting live worldwide with over 500 guests watching. To welcome you to Lisbon, we call on stage the Mayor of Lisbon, Fernando Medina.
Dear Minister that is following us online, my dear Carlos Moedas, member of the board of the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation, caro Humberto Rosa, in representation of DG Environment, dear all, it is a great pleasure to have you all here in this conference. Obviously, we would prefer other format and other timing, but we don't choose neither of them, neither the format, neither the environment that we are facing this conference. So it is a great pleasure for us to host this conference and to continue in promoting and tracking visibility to the green agenda. I would like to thank everyone that was involved in building this conference, namely the main organizing, Miguel Araújo. Thank you very much for your support. Deputy Mayor for Environment in the City of Lisbon. And I want that the next events could be a major follow in the discussion about the Green Agenda, namely on this topic about biodiversity. I would like to stress that we don't, probably the main conclusion of the time that we are living is that when some more or less obvious for a political decision making, we didn't choose the virus. We didn't choose this pandemic, but we have a very strong word to say in what is going to be the world after that. And one thing that is clearly now, more clear, is that the protection of the environment and the sustainability of our development process is a key issue in protecting us in the future. One thing that is very clear now from all the investigation that we know about this pandemic is that the severity of this pandemic on human beings is strongly connected with our ability to resist. So it is to say, it is weaker in places where we have strong and high levels of pollution. This is something that is now consolidated in the research about this pandemic, is the weakness of the respiratory systems of human beings. It is a cause of a deepen and a stronger and more negative effects on human beings. And it is being studied if pollution has or not a role in the spread of the pandemic, in the way that the virus is spreading. So one thing that is very clear from our point of view, from the City of Lisbon, from the political process and our future agenda, is that the main lesson that we can take of this pandemic is that we need to go faster and deeper on the green agenda. The Secretary General of the UN said yesterday a very good sentence in the way that he says there is no vaccination for climate change. And if we join the two, the very strong battle that we have before the pandemic about climate change and the urgency, the sense of urgency that this pandemic is showing us about sustainability, everyone is going to have to move faster and move deeper on this agenda. So I want to say from here once again to give a warm welcome to all that are here in this room, the hundreds that are following this conference online, that we are strongly committed to go faster on the green agenda. Lisbon is in this year the European Green Capital. We are adapting our agenda. We are adapting the public face of the event, but we didn't change anything about our compromise and our will to go faster on this agenda. And I'm very pleased to say that in connection with the national government, we put the money, we are going to put the money where our mouth is. A very important English sentence, that is to say, let's see what is the level of compromise. And one thing that is now negotiated between the Lisbon metropolitan area and the national government is that we are going to make very strong investments on the recovery plan directly connected to the green agenda, mainly in two areas: housing. And someone could ask, what is housing has to do about all of this? Everything. Because housing and quality housing, it is what is going to allow us to help on climate change, because of the materials that we use, because the places where we are going to build it, to allow cities and metropolitan area to work in much shorter cycles, just to reduce the amount of energy that we need to move from one place to another. And the second is to strengthen a massive public transportation system in the metropolitan area. Not at city level, not at two cities together, but on the whole of the metropolitan area. It is to say, in a dimension that will cover the most of the commuting that is needed to work, to study, to cultural, to buy things. We could use a strong public network system. That is our goal, that is our compromise, and I'm very happy to say that it was a very good agreement that it was made in this program, and it is going to frame the next European support program to Portugal, that the biggest part of the investment is going to sustain what is the biggest contribution of the city and the metropolitan area of Lisbon to climate change, that is to say, to fight the emissions that we have to reduce. So I would like to wish you all a very good conference, a very good Green Week, and let us concentrate what is in our hands, and in our hands it is the most important things to do. Thank you very much.
We would like to invite on stage, representing our host venue and partner, the trustee of the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation, Carlos Moedas.
Muito bom dia. Dear Mayor of Lisbon, Fernando Medina, dear Deputy Mayor, Sá Fernandes, dear Commissioner Virginius Sinkevicius in Brussels, dear Commissioner Elisa Ferreira, dear representative of the European Commission in Portugal, Sofia Alves, my dear friend, my dear colleague Humberto Rosa, also from the Commission, and all of you for being here today. On behalf of the Gulbenkian Foundation, and on behalf of the President, Isabel Mota, it is a great pleasure to welcome you here for this official opening of the European Green Week 2020, a new beginning for people and nature. It is an honor for the Gulbenkian Foundation to be part of this journey with you, because we surely need a new beginning, a kind of a complete reset of humanity's relationship with nature. And as recently David Attenborough said, to restore stability to our planet, we must restore biodiversity, the very thing that we have removed. It is actually the only way out of the crisis. We must rewild the world. Biodiversity is really the most vital system of our planet, apart from our moral obligation, our ethical obligation to protect wildlife and natural ecosystems, the human-centered arguments are really in front of us, but sometimes it looks like we don't want to see them. First, wildlife supports ecosystems, and without ecosystems, there is no life. But the chain between biodiversity and our lives is sometimes so long that we don't see it, that the people on the street don't see it, that without plants, there will be no oxygen, that without bees to pollinate, there will be no fruits or nuts, that coral reefs protect us from cyclones and tsunamis, that without the tropical tortoises, there will be no great trees that will remove the carbon dioxide because they will not be able to grow because the tortoises are the ones that spread the seeds. Humans depend so heavily on these benefits of the natural ecosystems, from food to fresh water to medicine or even to oxygen. The more biodiversity we lose, the weaker ecosystems become and compromising the provision for such vital elements to humanity. Second, maintaining biodiverse ecosystems is extremely important for our health. The mayor just reminded us of the numerous relationships between the destruction of biodiversity and human diseases. Look at the bat-associated virus that emerged from the loss of their habitat. If you destroy the habitat of bats, they will not eat the insects that will eat the virus that transmit diseases. Somehow, that's the chain that we have to repeat and repeat so people can understand, that we can actually digest the importance of the ecosystems. And third, biodiversity is essential as a part of the fight against climate change. Forest and coastal ecosystems are huge carbon sinkers and effective natural buffers to extreme weather events. And somehow, sometimes we don't see it. 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature will decrease the yields of wheat by 7%. The wheat that make our bread will be decreased by just 1 degree Celsius increase in temperature by 7% in production. The CO2 that has been absorbed by the oceans, that has already increased the acidity of those oceans by 30%. If you tell this to people, they say, and so what? Yes, then the species will not be able to create and build their shells and their skeletons. And that is the problem that you have to repeat and repeat. So this effect of human activity on nature is so big that we are surpassing the planet's boundaries beyond the ability of natural systems. And if you look in economic terms, the amount of really the gross domestic product of the world that depends on nature is basically half of it. So half of the GDP of the world depends exactly on nature. 44 trillion euros of value that you can lose. So you have to connect these dots. And as President Ursula von der Leyen said so rightly, there is no more urgent need for acceleration than when it comes to the future of our fragile planet. So I'm sure that the discussions today will be fruitful in between what is the role of the government, what are the role of the private sector. But let me remind you that there is also the role of other parts of society, like us, the foundations. The role of foundations in this fight will be crucial. Philanthropy is a major player because philanthropy is really in the middle, in between the private sector and the public sector. And that's the role that we want to play. The Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation has been strongly committed. And we've done really the biggest thing one can do. Since the creation of this foundation, last year, President Motta decided to divest entirely from fossil fuels. This is an amazing move. It's an historical move for the foundation. is to tell the people inside and outside that the direction of the future has changed. And I'm sure that if Carlos Gulbenkian was alive, he would take exactly the same move, because he was a visionary in his own time, because he looked at nature in his own time, and today he would do that move like we did. And that's one of the biggest moves that this foundation has done, and we should praise that. We have, with our team of sustainability, promoted training to innovative startups. We have launched a Green Skills Initiative, whose main goal is to train people and companies to get the necessary skills to accelerate the transition to a green economy. We have partnered with other foundations, like Oceano Azul with Tiago Pitei-Cunha, to exactly make the leverage that alone we cannot do it. We have to do it with others, with other foundations, with the government, with the private sector. But finally, we launched the Gulbenkian Prize for Humanity, a prize of €1 million that we will give each year for people that are really transforming the way we look into the problem, for people that are acting. And let me tell you just a little story of this year's award. We gave this year's award to Greta Thunberg. And it was really impressive when myself and the president, we called her, this very young woman. And her first reaction was, look, the money cannot be for me. I want to give that money to people on the ground. And you see the immediate reaction of the younger generation. The younger generation is actually doing something and does it so naturally that one is surprised by it, because it's so different from my generation. And when you look at what she did already, from the first week that she got the prize, she sent us immediately a list of the people that she wanted to help. And she already basically donated almost half of the prize. She will donate all the prize, not to really any vague cause, but to people on the ground. She has donated to people that are tackling COVID-19 in the Amazon. She gave it to people that are supporting the way that you can make ecocide an international crime. She really helped the people that are flood victims in India and Bangladesh. She gave it to people that are cleaning up the Mauritius oil spill, and she gave money to help the most vulnerable in the climate crisis in the African continent. So we are so proud of it, because I remember when we gave the prize that people looked, are you giving this prize to such a young woman? Yes, because she's doing it, because she's doing more than others that speak and speak but don't do it, and she does it. And so we as a foundation are very proud, and I hope that you are also very proud of it. And now I really wish you a great and productive day of work. I'm sure that you have a decisive role in designing the new beginning that we all desire. And as someone once said, biodiversity represents the knowledge learned by evolving species. It's like a library, and today we are burning the library of life. So let's stop it now. Thank you very much.
As the host of the EU Green Week 2020, we will now hear from the European Commissioner for the Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, Virginijus Sinkevicius.
A very good morning to everyone, and thank you for hosting the opening of the Green Week 2020. My warmest thanks to Mayor Medina and to all of your team for the hard work you have put into organize today, under exceptionally difficult circumstances. I'm sure it's not quite the opening you had in mind, but congratulations for your perseverance and your determination to make it happen. This year's Green Week is all about protecting and restoring our precious nature and biodiversity. It's very fitting that the opening is hosted by a winner of the European Green Capital Award. Well-planned cities with interconnected parks and gardens are not just better places to live and breathe. They are also heavens for biodiversity, often richer in wildlife than many people realize. I'm sure we will hear more about the excellent work that Lisbon has been doing in these areas later on. If I'm speaking to you virtually today, that is because of the pandemic. The coronavirus outbreak has brought unprecedented challenges, and our lives will be very different when we emerge from the crisis. But some things have become unexpected clear. For many people, the pandemic has highlighted the importance of the relationship between people and nature. It's shown just one of many dangers of losing biodiversity. When we lose our nature, we undermine the web of life we depend on, and we actually increase the risk of diseases passing from wildlife to people. We need nature for so many reasons. We depend on it for food, clean air, for clean and fresh water. It regulates the climate, it keeps pests and diseases under control. It reduces the risk of natural disaster, and it plays a vital role in our mental and physical health. When we forget these things, we put ourselves in danger. The Green Week is an attempt to correct that, to give space for nature in our lives. Nature is our safety net, and it is time to mend the holes in the net. Scientists and advocacy groups have been repeating these messages for many years, often with little success. But the wind is changing. Biodiversity and nature are riding high on the EU policy agenda. As EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said in her State of the Union speech a few weeks ago, nature cannot continue to pay this price. That's why, in May this year, in the midst of the pandemic, we came forward with a new strategy for biodiversity. It tackles all the key drivers of biodiversity loss, from unsustainable use of land and sea to overexploitation of natural resources, pollution, and invasive alien species. The timing wasn't an accident. We held it back due to the pandemic, and we strengthened its capacity to contribute to the EU economy. As a result, it's now an important element of the EU's recovery plan, with a role in building resilience and preventing future outbreaks, and a resource of immediate business and investment opportunities to help restore the EU's economy. It includes a wide range of ambitious commitments. It brings new binding targets to restore our damaged ecosystems and rivers, measures to improve the health of EU protected habitats and species, expanding our protected areas to cover 30% of EU land and sea, and a set of clear objectives to bring back pollinators, reduce pollution, and green our cities over the coming years. The Green Week will see in-depth sessions discussing every aspect of the strategy, searching for ways to turn these commitments into a reality on the ground. In the end, it all comes down to that. We have no use for a theoretical strategy. It has to deliver the changes that we need. That means real-world implementation down at the local level. That's why the strategy calls for all cities with more than 20,000 inhabitants to develop ambitious urban greening plans by the end of 2021. It is an opportunity for Lisbon and our other green capitals and green leaf cities to show how it can be done. These pioneering cities are taking great strides to increase the level of urban sustainability, to improve the quality of citizens' lives. You are showing the world what a green city is and the things that can be achieved. That's exactly what we need. We need to show that the transition to more sustainable, greener cities can create healthier urban areas for the benefit of the planet, our citizens, and the economy. The Commission is supporting these urban transitions in every way it can. Next week, we will work with the mayors of the Green City Accord to be launched in the Week of Regions and Cities. Our aim is to provide guidance and support and make sure that finances are available to spur the change. Together, we can help shape the future of Europe's urban environment and help you to deliver the commitments set out in the biodiversity strategy. It's all about delivery. I want that to be the key word of Green Week 2020. Thank you very much for all of you in Lisbon, and good luck with the rest of this opening.
We will now hear from the European Commissioner for Cohesion and Reforms, Elisa Ferreira.
Senhor Primeiro-Ministro, Senhor Presidente da Câmara de Lisboa, senhoras e senhores, lamento não poder estar convosco fisicamente, como era a minha intenção, mas, como sabem, tive de me auto-isolar depois de ter estado em contacto com um colaborador que testou positivo para a Covid-19, mas felizmente que a tecnologia hoje em dia permite outras opções e posso estar virtualmente. Devo dizer que, enquanto portuguesa, é para mim uma grande satisfação que esta sessão esteja a decorrer em Lisboa, capital verde da Europa 2020. É um título que Lisboa fez e faz por merecer. Do sucesso da redução das emissões de CO2, do consumo de energia e de água, até à promoção de uma mobilidade mais sustentável, entre muitos outros aspectos. Lisboa tem-se destacado pela positiva. E enquanto Comissária para a Coesão e as Reformas, fico igualmente satisfeita que esta Semana Verde coincida com a parte final da Semana Europeia das Regiões e dos Municípios, que é, no fundo, o maior evento anual europeu dedicado à política regional e durante o qual se debateu intensamente o papel das cidades e das regiões no crescimento económico, na criação de emprego e na transformação ambiental, climática da Europa. Senhoras e senhores, a discussão que nos motiva no encontro de hoje é vital. Vital porque urge mudar a forma como produzimos, a forma como consumimos, a forma como viajamos. Vital porque os cidadãos, em particular os mais novos, estão profundamente preocupados com o futuro do planeta, que é o mesmo que dizer, preocupados com a sobrevivência deles e de todos nós. Vital ainda porque ou a fazemos, essa mudança, com os meios de que vamos dispor, ou nunca mais teremos condições para a fazer. O tema desta Semana Verde, como assegurar a biodiversidade, é particularmente relevante, porque travar a perda de biodiversidade é uma componente fundamental do processo de transição ecológica. A alteração urgente da tendência em curso requer coordenação global, mas muita ação local. E a infinidade de consequências que decorrem da perda do equilíbrio global que a biodiversidade garante obriga a uma responsabilização de todos e de cada um. Mesmo os mais pequenos gestos do nosso dia-a-dia dependem de uma diversidade biológica que está em risco. Por exemplo, o café que tomamos hoje de manhã depende da sobrevivência de polinizadores selvagens do outro lado do mundo. Urge mudar hábitos e proteger a natureza. É mesmo um imperativo. Minhas senhoras e meus senhores, há um provérbio africano que me parece oportuno. Se queres ir depressa, vai sozinho. Se queres chegar longe, vai acompanhado. A viagem que temos pela frente será longa. Teremos, por isso, que ter connosco alguns companheiros de viagem essenciais para uma transição verde bem-sucedida. Em primeiro lugar, não haverá transição verde sem o nível local. A crise provocada pelo Covid-19 foi um aviso sobre a importância dos serviços de proximidade, dos centros de saúde, lojas de bairro, infraestruturas municipais, boa administração local. As instituições locais têm estado na linha da frente da pandemia e estarão necessariamente na primeira linha também da transição ecológica. A adaptação de empresas e negócios ecologicamente inviáveis vai obrigar empresários, trabalhadores e autoridades locais a reinventarem-se, a criar novos negócios, novas estratégias económicas. Vai obrigar trabalhadores a requalificarem-se. Vai obrigar a investir em novos processos de produzir, de circular, de habitar, de consumir. Vai obrigar a novas respostas por parte das entidades públicas, providenciando novos tipos de infraestruturas e serviços, mesmo a segmentos de população menos atrativos para os operadores privados. Redes digitais, estações de carregamento, espaços urbanos reorganizados. Neste processo, as cidades, enquanto polos de concentração de saber, investigação, capacidade administrativa e financeira, assumem responsabilidades particulares. E é o reconhecimento deste papel muito particular que se espera das cidades, enquanto líderes da transição verde e digital, que justifica algumas alterações em curso nos regulamentos dos fundos estruturais. Tudo se encaminha, por exemplo, para que as cidades venham a beneficiar de um aumento da sua reserva no Fundo Europeu de Desenvolvimento Regional, o FEDER, dos atuais 5% no atual quadro para 8% no quadro de 2021-2027. De facto, no atual quadro financeiro, 2014-20, as cidades europeias beneficiaram da possibilidade de gerirem diretamente cerca de 17 mil milhões de euros ao abrigo precisamente dessa reserva de 5%, embora naturalmente o apoio global que nelas incidiu seja muito superior. Ora, assentando a razão de ser da existência de uma política de coesão, na necessidade de estimular o desenvolvimento acelerado dos espaços menos dinâmicos, de modo a que o mercado interno seja compatível com a estabilidade social, económica e política, um tratamento preferencial das zonas mais dinâmicas só pode justificar-se pela capacidade de arrastamento, difusão, liderança e responsabilização que tais polos assumam, seja face ao território diretamente envolvente, como são as áreas metropolitanas ou as zonas rurais, seja face ao restante território nacional. Isto leva-me ao segundo elemento essencial nesta viagem: assegurar que a transição se faz de forma justa e harmoniosa. A União Europeia definiu o Pacto Ecológico Europeu, o Green Deal, como a sua grande prioridade. Estamos determinados em tornar a Europa no primeiro continente neutro em carbono em todo o mundo. E este compromisso é acompanhado de um financiamento muito significativo, como se sabe. A nível da União, quase 1/3 do envelope proposto conjuntamente no próximo Orçamento Europeu e no Plano de Recuperação será canalizado para os Objetivos Verdes, ou seja, mais de 600 mil milhões de euros. Mas há objetivos adicionais na aplicação destes fundos. Eles são mais do que investimento em descarbonização ou tecnologias verdes. Eles têm de ser um investimento no futuro das pessoas, garantindo que todos participam na transição, que nenhuma região, nenhuma minoria, nenhum estrato social ficará para trás. Para isso, a política de coesão vai ser essencial. Mas não seria admissível nem aceitável que dois grandes instrumentos financeiros, o quadro plurianual e o Plano de Recuperação e Resiliência, operassem cada um de per si de forma isolada, correndo o risco até de se anularem mutuamente. De facto, o novo instrumento proposto, o tal Plano de Recuperação e Resiliência, que, como é sabido no caso português, acresce com mais cerca de 13 mil milhões de euros de subsídios ao quadro plurianual habitual, chamemos-lhe assim, criaram-se pela primeira vez, nesse âmbito, instrumentos de apoio a reformas. Reformas possíveis como a modernização da administração pública, central, regional e ou local, ou a onda de renovação nos edifícios com enfoque no respectivo comportamento energético, ou a digitalização geral do país, ou a mobilidade urbana sustentável. Portugal foi um dos primeiros países a apresentar o esboço do que pretende fazer, e o diálogo com a Comissão Europeia decorrerá até ao fim do ano, previsivelmente, precisamente sobre esse texto. Mas também, no que concerne às reformas, tenhamos consciência de que o aumento da resiliência de uma comunidade no pós-crise, que é o objetivo central deste apoio extraordinário, só pode ser bem sucedida se assentar em tecnologias viradas para o futuro, preservadoras do ambiente, mas também territorialmente e socialmente inclusivas e solidárias. Significa isto que uma sociedade é tanto mais resiliente quanto mais funcionar numa base multipolar, quanto mais partilhar experiências e boas práticas, quanto mais e melhor for capaz de difundir e arrastar todos os cidadãos num processo de desenvolvimento sustentável. A forma como Portugal decidir, fim a esta discussão, aplicar os fundos extraordinários disponíveis, irá formatar o modo como Portugal se vai desenvolver na próxima década. Só através de uma abordagem multinível, coerente, entre responsabilidades centrais, regionais e locais, em torno de uma visão partilhada e comum, pode a transição ser uma realidade e cumprir os objetivos de ser não apenas verde, mas acima de tudo justa e equilibrada. Há um manancial de experiências inspiradoras, incluindo as cooperações no contexto dos programas Interreg, Agenda Urbana Europeia, e portanto a experiência existe. Temos de a aproveitar. Por último, não haverá transição verde sem jovens. No decurso da semana passada, durante a Semana Europeia das Regiões e dos Municípios em Bruxelas, reuni vários grupos de jovens. Confirmei o quanto eles têm consciência dos desafios fundamentais da nossa era. E a salvaguarda do planeta está no centro. Apelidamos a proposta apresentada pela Comissão em maio de Next Generation, a geração seguinte, precisamente porque o objetivo não é financiar apenas um plano de emergência. É um plano para construir o futuro, uma sociedade e economia a todos os títulos mais resilientes, ou seja, mais fortes, mais coesas, mais justas, uma sociedade em que os jovens de hoje vão viver. Precisamos que os jovens sejam parte ativa na definição de um futuro que, ao fim e ao cabo, é deles. Em conclusão, minhas senhoras e meus senhores, precisamos unir forças. A viagem será longa, exigirá algumas mudanças importantes nos estilos de vida, padrões de consumo, métodos de produção. Mas o destino vale a pena. A visão do primeiro continente neutro em termos de carbono, com um crescimento sustentável, gerador de emprego, cidades mais verdes, mais habitáveis, onde a biodiversidade é preservada, é uma imagem aliciante. E não poderia haver ponto de partida mais inspirador do que a cidade de Lisboa, com o cais das colunas aí ao lado, aquele que já viu partir grandes epopeias da história portuguesa, europeia e mundial. Muito obrigada e bom trabalho.
Please welcome live Minister for Environment and Climate Action of Portugal, João Pedro Matos Fernandes.
So, good morning to you all. Thank you for this invitation. Congratulations by organizing the European Green Capital 2020. Your Excellencies, I will start by reading 4 paragraphs. The foremost drivers of biodiversity loss include changing land use, direct exploitation of organisms, climate change, pollution, and invasive alien species derived mostly from the current human consumption. These unsustainable practices have led to significant losses, requiring the greatest urgency to redefine our relation with nature, as unfortunately the current global health pandemic proves. The scientific community recognizes the complex interconnections between the health of people, animals, plants, and environment, which are based on fragile balance, ensuring that when activity or fertile, the ability to deal with new diseases is smaller. This current crisis is unfortunately a wake-up call that we cannot stop. Unlike what happened at the the consequences and impacts associated with biodiversity loss are still little perceived. And this is why this is the time for biodiversity. And those are not just words like Hamlet. The pandemic shows if we think on human health, we also have to think on animal and mental health. Things are changing and they need change. We have to stop the loss of biodiversity. At the same time, we show how important it is both for society and economy. We lose the ice sheet, but if we think a little bit, they were really meant to be lost. We have to do biodiversity the same way we did on climate change, with targets and with incentives. All our efforts are in all our efforts with the next COP, China. I hope it happens next October. Portugal is famous for what we do and what we did, reducing emissions and closely energy. It's public, it becomes public today that we are the first country in the world which use most solar, sun, wind sources for electricity. We have to recognize that we are not as famous for our work the most electricity. It is change. We will still pay for ecosystem services. And if we listen to those words worldwide, I believe that we are the first country in Europe which is already for those ecosystem services. Next gap has to be completely different. We have to stop global greening. We really need to help forests and the property forests have money to do the best. In the last 4 years, we spent 26 million euros in restoring sustainable ecosystem. And we have a complete brand new policy for forest and landscape. We are beginning, planning, and we are beginning. We have to have plans of 1.2 million country, which means more or less 20% of our landscape. If we want to reduce rural fires per half, we have also to pay for the public goods that come from forest. Forest is much more than the trees. Forests, 98% of the forests belong to the private. It's really source of the water that we drink, the air that we breathe, and all the electricity. Definitely, environmental issues can't be on the environmental and sustainability have to be, as it is a be on the center of economic recovery. This economic recovery includes electrification, includes new ways of mobility, includes renewable gases, includes new ways of management, and also natural capital and biodiversity. We can't build the future thinking with the implements of the past. This is really what we want to enforce, and it's already written in our recovery plan. So I think that things like this one are really important for Lisbon, are really important for the country, are really important for Europe. Unfortunately, I can't be with you today, but I wish you a very, very good week.
Thank you, Minister Matos Fernandes. This concludes our opening session.